Hmm. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask? Hmm. You know, the whole process of spiritual development, inner work, um, and the ultimate realization is that it all comes back to ourselves. It all comes back to the fact that, if we're not unhappy living in this body that we have, if we're not happy with the world, if our heart's closed, I mean, it's a constant reminder, that we have to deeply change inside. And not to get upset and angry at oneself because there's a little depression or neurosis or whatever, but to recognize that it's a sign. It is telling us quite simply, that we need to change. A spiritual life takes place inside each and every one of us. And as we change inside ourselves, when we look out at the world, we begin to see a different world. It's not that the world changes much, we just see it differently. Our consciousness has evolved to where we can see how whatever we experience in life becomes an opportunity to grow instead of an opportunity to beat ourselves up. Now, this starts inside each and every human being. And, in most cases, people work exactly the opposite. They put every ounce of energy they have into fixing the world. And I've heard that really since I can, when I was 3 years old, I used to hear stuff like that. And now, and the world's just as crazy. It's not going to be fixed until people truly learn how to fix themselves. And that's what this meditation is about. That's all it's about. As I've said 100 times already, it's not a religion, it's not a cult, it's nothing. It doesn't matter what your, religious beliefs are, where you come from. It's a matter of fixing what is wrong inside, what doesn't work. And the meditation, the breathing, the proper use of the mind, development of a chakra system, that's what it's about, fixing the one person who's keeping all of us from having a spiritual life, and that's ourselves. And if that doesn't get fixed, I mean, I don't know if a spiritual life is possible. I don't care how deeply your beliefs are and your religious, inclinations. And if you don't fix your inner self, if you do fix your inner self, all of it begins to work. All of it is teaching you how to get closer to God. Now, this might be a hard thing to digest. Much easier to think we're going to take some kind of a psychological wrench and apply it to the world, and try to renovate life so that it works according to the way we think it's supposed to work. Doesn't work. Never worked. But we can take the tools we're born with, mind, breath, chakras, will, need, internalize them, and use them to build a system that is strong enough to be able to transform the way we think, the way we feel, our unhappiness, our anxieties into something that's positive, something that's wonderful inside us. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask? I know I talk about it a lot, and maybe you're getting tired of hearing it. I don't know. But it always gets back to that. It gets back to basics. It doesn't get back to ritual and, the kind of costumes people wear. It gets back to basic internal energies that are chaotic inside us that need to be strengthened and transformed. And then our whole perception of the internal world, the external, it all changes. It all changes. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask? If you have a hard time loving other people, fix yourself. Don't try to fix that. Fix yourself. Get stronger, more open. If you have a hard time at your job, with your family, fix yourself. It's a very simple solution that is very difficult to do. But it's a simple solution to a universal problem that can be done if people do the work on themselves. Doesn't happen immediately, but over time, incrementally, slowly, gradually. They should do the clocks have been changed. So the class is an hour earlier. Oh, don't hold your head. It's all right. A lot of people have made this mistake. So try to fix, you don't have to fix your clock. It's just an hour earlier. That's all. And on the 26th of March, it'll be the same time because the clocks will be fixed in Europe. Okay? Happy to see you. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart, yes. I have a question.
Yes.
Towards the end of his life, Nityananda said several times that everything happens automatically by the will of God. How do you see this kind of...
I see it exactly the same, Luke. You see, there's the will of God that is creating everything around us and inside us. And then there's the will of each and every one of us that has to attune ourselves to the will of God. And that also is doing the will of God, We have to, look, we have to build a system inside. That is the job of human beings that will open and attune itself to how energy is created and manifests here, because it all is the will of God. I agree with Nityananda, 100%.
Does it mean everything is already fixed? It's predetermined?
Pretty much, yeah. It's all, people's living in an erotic state is, this is what they have to learn to overcome in this lifetime. People that his hearts are open, it's all predetermined and stuff, It's all fixed. And yet at the same time, it's all kind of God's improvisation with life, God's creativity. We have to attune ourselves to it. Then we see the world differently. It's no longer this insane place. It's a place that is manifested by God to teach us what we need to do to learn in order to connect with higher energy in the universe. So I don't think Nityananda was, he was a very wise man. And I think Rudy took it a step further. Okay, yes, that is all true. But here's how you get there. You got to learn to work on yourself. Here's how you do it. And you make that inner effort, and there's harmony. There's balance. There's a way of seeing the world that gets past all the illusion and all this kind of dysfunction that goes on in life. And what is the dysfunction? It's teaching us the same thing. We need to work on ourselves in order to get past it. It's also a manifestation of God. Everything is. And yet people live in their minds, they live in their emotions, they know better than God, they know better than the higher energy, and you have chaos instead of surrender. Okay, what do I have to learn? What do I have to open to? What is the universe teaching me? Surrender. Let go of all the stuff that's in your head and your rightness, and you have to be right, and you have to be this, and you have to be that. And I want a room of my own and live and have nobody touch me. And, it's all bullshit, And once that act of surrender begins to take place inside person, we embrace life. We're not afraid to let life touch us. We're not afraid to be vulnerable to what life brings to us. And that allows us to grow spiritually. What Nityananda said is very true. And what Rudy did was also very true. Okay, I accept that truth, and here is a way for human beings to evolve into that truth. It's enabled me to evolve into that truth. Not that I'm fully there, I'm not. I still have work to do on myself, thank God. Otherwise, I thank God for having work to do on myself. And a lot of it, and it makes me grow, it makes me open, it makes me, recognize that energy is infinite in the universe, and I can continue to grow and absorb that energy and allow the knowledge and the wisdom to continue to filter through me of what's infinite in the universe, not what I know in my head, but what's infinite in the universe. I hope that's clear, Luke. You know, I mean, it's a very important element, and especially doing this kind of meditation. The goal has to be to open to what's infinite and to allow the knowledge come from realms that are outside of time and space, and, you know, wisdom to come from there. And then we become a living improvisation of God. Extraordinary thing. I mean, you know.
Yes, it's clear.
Huh?
It's clear, Stuart.
I'm
thank
glad
you.
it's clear. It also is a reason to do deep inner work. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Hi, Stuart. I have a question.
Yes.
Um, I came across a video on YouTube of this guy, Bo Buchanan, which I imagine is
I can't wait. You know, you'll have to speak clearer to me. I can't.
Okay. I came across a video on YouTube of an interview with Bo Buchanan, the friend of yours that was
Oh,
the
yeah.
and it really touched me and moved me. The depth in his, I don't know, being, I guess. And I wondered, you may not want to speak about it, but I was amazed that, you know, he was the pilot, and then he lived with that, had to live with that. And I wondered if you could speak about not his journey, but I don't know, something about that.
Well, you know, I was in that airplane with Bo and Rudy and Mimi, and there were four of us in that airplane that hit the mountain. And I know that Bo lived a very tortured life. He had to deal with that situation the rest of his life. And, he and I were very close for a long time. And then he just went off and he was living in California. And I used to hear from him once a year. On Rudy's Samadhi Day, he would always call me. And then we would have about a half-hour conversation. His girlfriend, I forgot her name, told me that when he passed on, I sent flowers, and she told me, I called there, and she told me that he used to speak about me a lot. He was a wonderful guy, Bo. He was an interesting guy and very wonderful. But I must say, the last, years of his life, he lived in a very tortured state. And the only way to get free of that tortured state, he had to go really deep inside himself. Not to justify what happened, but to find out. I mean, I even told him, Bo, it wasn't you. I mean, I know the real reasons that happened, which I've never told anybody. I was told this by an incredible psychic, why that airplane crash took place. It wasn't Bo's fault. He wasn't responsible. And I don't talk about this. I can't talk about this. It's too crazy. And it's too, but I kept telling him that for years. It wasn't your fault. But he had to live with that. And he had to learn how to use that experience in order to deepen his spiritual life and for him to get closer to God. Now, as I say, the last 10, 12 years of his life, I rarely ever saw him. In fact, I never saw him. He was living in California. We really didn't have much communication. Before that, we were very close. So I don't know basically how he dealt with it, how he handled it. Times I was with him, I know I could see a lot of torture inside him, a lot of pain inside him. very difficult situation. The only way I was capable of dealing with that is I remembered what Rudy said. He said to me, you know, don't mourn me when I leave here. Don't do this. Just learn what I have to teach and use it to develop your connection with God. I tell people the same thing. Learn what I have to teach, use it to develop your connection with God. And I also understood profoundly, even the moment of that accident, the only reason I lived through that was that Rudy put his life in me, his soul force in me. And that's the only reason. And I used to look in the mirror, and I still look in the mirror, and I see a living miracle. And I have no alternative but to be of service to God, higher energy in the universe. I don't think that went deep enough in Bo. You understand? He was tortured with what happened. I don't think it went deep enough in him. I don't know, because really for 10, 12 years, I never saw him, you know? But that's how I survived that crash and why I do what I do today. And I mean, if I thought about it for 5 minutes, it simply has to be the most horrible thing that ever happened to me in my life. Having been in that airplane with Rudy and having to see the person who was my master, who I loved probably more than anyone in the world, lying there, passed on. And one of my first thoughts after that was, I just said, thank you for allowing me to be with you the last moment of your life. Thank you for the last 6 years of what you taught me, how you saved my life. And now I will really find out what the last 6 years were all about, if I really learned what he had to teach me. But there was nothing in me that lamented, and it was his karma. And I had to be open, grateful for him, loving him, doing whatever I could in this world to serve what he taught me so that he wouldn't have to come back and fix up a mess. So I don't know what went on in Bo. I could look in his eyes and I saw a lot of pain, but I can only talk from what happened to me going through that. It was something, I mean, I must say, if I had one moment in my existence that was probably more painful than any other moment I can remember, even more painful than when my father died. It was the moment that Rudy took his samadhi. And yet I had no choice but to say to him and say inside myself and to say to God, what did I learn studying with this great master? How can I use everything I've learned to serve God and to find out, did I really learn it? And that's how I directed my life. And I still direct my life that way. I mean, I wrote a book I don't know if you ever read the book I wrote called Rudy. It's about that airplane crash. It takes you through from the moment we took off to the moment we hit the mountain. But it's not really a book about the airplane crash. It's a book about learning what it means to have a spiritual teacher. That's what the whole book is really about. Learning what it means to have a spiritual teacher. Learning what it means, how deeply you have to surrender, and what you have to do to learn from a master. That's what that book is really about. And I use this kind of allegory of the airplane in order to teach that. So God bless Bo. He was always a dear person to me. We were we were very good friends, before. And then that airplane crash, we were still very good friends. I was living in Texas at the time. But I always could feel that pain, that unhappiness, that torture inside him because of what he went through. And I told him many times, Bo, it wasn't your fault. So I told him because I learned why it happened. And it's just something too horrible. It's like science fiction. It's too horrible to talk about.
Thanks so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome, Lisa. Well, thank you for coming late and asking that question. God bless you, dear. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, then there will be meditation on Thursday. Looking forward to seeing everybody. And again, as I always say, thank you and bless you all for, in your own way, in your own wonderful way, being my teacher, forcing me to do service to God. And I have a lot of gratitude to each and every person that attends these classes. Thank you. God bless you all. And I will see you all on Thursday.